Hello and welcome to Inspired to Taste. I'm Liz Joy, and today I'll be showing you how to make these playful and delicious Pikachu cookie pops filled with chocolate chip cookie dough ganache. Let's get started. I'm going to be using this mini creamsicle mold from Silicomart. I love Silicomart molds because they're high quality, 100% food safe, and can be used for frozen as well as baked desserts. Just really versatile and worth the splurge if you're interested in working with molds. I'm starting by rolling chilled sugar cookie dough to 3 millimeters in thickness, or about 1/8 inch. This will make up the shell of my dessert, so I want to keep it relatively thin to allow room for my filling. You can find a link to the recipe I used in the description below. Using a laminated template and a sharp craft knife, I'm cutting out my shapes to line the inside of the molds. Then I'm just placing this into the mold as carefully as possible, making sure to press firmly all around. And then removing the excess. The dough may slide down a bit when baking, so I'm making it just a tiny bit taller than the edges. I also want to make sure my popsicle sticks are nice and sturdy, so I'm adding a bit more dough to the bottom of each mold for a slightly thicker base. Then I'm carefully inserting each popsicle stick. If the dough is too soft to work with, just chill it for a few minutes in the freezer before continuing. To help keep these shapes intact, I'm going to set them in the freezer for at least 15 minutes before baking. Then I'm baking them at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 12 minutes. These bubbled a bit while baking, so I'm going to use the rounded handle of a butter knife as a tamper and gently press everything back into shape. Now it's time for the filling. I'm going with a chocolate chip cookie dough ganache and have included the recipe in the description below. Make sure the filling gets under the popsicle sticks as well, and just about to the top edge of the shells so they're nice and full. I cut, baked, and cooled these base pieces ahead of time and am attaching them by pressing them firmly but gently into the filling. Afterwards, I'll chill these in the fridge and the bases will stick more securely to the ganache as it sets. And now I can demold them. Do this carefully to avoid jarring the bases or popsicle sticks out of place. I used royal icing to fill in any obvious cracks and dents and to create a smoother work surface for myself. My base pieces were a little bit big and are sticking out from the shells just a bit, but I really want them to be flush to make decorating these guys easier and to create a more seamless finished design. Luckily, there's a super easy fix. You can just use a microplane or zester to quickly shave down the edges and get everything nice and tidy. Time to add Pikachu's ears. I made these cookie ears ahead of time and am going to use thick royal icing to attach them. Their length may make them droop a bit, so I'm going to prop them up until the icing's dry and they're nice and secure. To add subtle depth to this design, I'm painting Pikachu's mouth directly onto the cookie surface using poppy paint food coloring, which is nice and opaque and dries really fast. Then it's time to frost the top half of this cookie pop with royal icing. I'm going to start by tracing the eyes and mouth. Then I'm piping a border all along the sides of the pop. I'll flood the top of the cookie to this edge first, allow the icing to dry, then flip it over and do the back. I want to keep this icing coating pretty thin since these treats are already so sweet and will be coated on all sides. So I'm using a somewhat thin flooding consistency of royal icing and painting the coating into place using a soft brush. You can obviously also dip these guys in dyed chocolate or candy melts like you would cake pops. but I wanted the freedom to decorate them like my regular cookie designs, and royal icing allows me to more easily build up the kind of depth I'm after. Next, I'm piping the eyes and adding highlights. Then outlining the mouth and his little nose. I'm using an edible marker to draw on the iconic red cheeks and the black tips on his ears. If you're enjoying this video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Once the fronts are completely dry, I'm going to flood the backs. Again, focusing more on just doing a thin layer of color coverage. This doesn't need to be perfect at all. We're just looking for a nice coating. Do make sure to bring the icing all the way down to the seam though, and cover any little gaps. After that dries, I'm adding Pikachu's back stripes with an edible marker. Then I'm outlining and flooding one side of a cookie tail. Allowing the icing to dry, then coloring in the base marking. And then using more royal icing to attach the tail, making sure it overlaps the edge of the pop. And lightly coating the front portion of the tail that shows. I'm making the hands and feet as royal icing transfers for consistency, piping them onto a laminate sheet, which is my favorite surface for transfers. These should ideally be allowed to dry overnight. To remove the transfers, simply slide the laminate sheet over a straight edge like a countertop while pulling down gently. They should slide right off. Then attach them, making sure they're nice and secure so they don't break. As a final detail, I'm adding little toes to each foot and will also outline his hands and feet with a brown edible marker to make sure they stand out a bit more. Let's take one final look and then dig into these goodies.
3, 2, 1.
Click or tap for my never fail royal icing recipe.